Hey everybody, welcome. Oh, I'm a little hot here on the mic. It is Johnny Torres. This is The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics, coming to you this Monday night as we do every Monday night at 7 o'clock. We have an exciting show for you tonight, as we usually do. Lots to talk about, both local, national, statewide, and I've also got a little bit of a mix-up here in the cast tonight, so it's going to be an exciting show. And like I said, we may have to go a little long, but as a courtesy to our guest, I'll try to make sure that does not happen tonight. Again, if you want to follow us along, you can do so at facebook.com/the yard sign. Real quick, we'll go ahead and show you who's at the head table today. Let me turn on your mics first. There we go. From left to right, Mr. Anibal Cabrera, as always. How you doing, sir?
Good evening, everyone. It's been a great time.
All right, and joining us today, one of our guest panelists. He's been here before. This is Chris Licata. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Did I pronounce it right?
Licata.
Dang it. All right, I'm sorry.
Licata.
I don't know. Licata sounds pretty cool to me. I don't know. And a very, very special guest. We're excited to have him because, again, there's so much that we can pick his brain about. He's always great to talk to, even off the air. Very pragmatic politician, individual. I mean, just a well-rounded guy, super nice guy, and we're excited to have him here with us today. City Councilman Louis Viera. How you doing, sir?
Doing well, Jonathan. Thank you for having me, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. We've been working on it for a little while, but again, everything that's worthwhile is worth waiting for. So we are excited to have you here. And as we always like to do in opening up the show, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, and make suggestions as to what we should be talking about tonight. And we'll share them here during the show. Our list of topics today include, of course, Hong Kong, and they have stood tall and proud and loud for their democracy. We're going to get a little bit into that. Of course, we've got Anibal to help us out with that topic. And Trump's impeachment, we'll do the latest update on that, some speculation on what's coming down the road for that. The Democratic primary update, there's been some major news since last Monday on that, and so we'll dig into that. Of course, having Councilman Viera with us, we're going to talk about some of the issues happening in the city of Tampa, including some that he's spearheading, and we'll kind of pick those apart. And then, of course, you may not have heard of, maybe don't even care about, the Hillsborough County Republican Party Lincoln Day dinner, and we'll dissect that as well and talk about really, what kind of an effect is that going to have on the Trump election in 2020, if at all. So thank you guys again for coming on to the show. We're going to, of course, start off with our expert in foreign affairs, and that is Mr. Anibal Cabrera. Let's talk Hong Kong. What's going on over there?
So elections were officially held over the weekend for the local district councils. There are a total of 452 chairs that were up for election. This is the first time in actually Hong Kong history that the entire division of this election, and this would be more compared to like the lower level of their government, lower level chambers of their government officials, either the 452. When the elections were last held in 2015, it was 126 for the pro-democracy, 298 for the pro-Beijing, and then 7 independents. As of this weekend, the current count is 289 for pro-democracy and then 57 for pro-Beijing. This is a complete, they're using the word tsunami, which I don't know if that's official. That's appropriate or not.
Hong Kong should be using the word tsunami, but I was doing a little bit of reading about this, and I was a little confused because the Hong Kong form of government is interesting to me in the sense that these local neighborhood councils is what it was making it sound like. How much control do they have over who the leader of Hong Kong is? Because I thought that was always picked by Beijing.
So imagine this as like a U.S., British, and then like Asian fusion of democracy / republic / communism. And so I would say this: these local chapters, their control over the government budget and everything else is very low. So they control recycling, parking passes, wave traffic control, things like that. There are very, very local issues when it comes to building regulations. They do have some power. They have very little when it comes to the budget, and they build, I would say, a fifth, or like 1/3 of the voting block to then vote for the actual chief executive for Hong Kong.
Even if they won all of the races, they would only control 20% of the vote for the person who's actually running Hong Kong.
So this is the thing. So this would be considered the lower level, the leg cow, which is more the legislative council, is broken up to like, and it's geographic and then functional, which is where it breaks up even more. It's not really for the people vote. This is the most direct for the people voting that Hong Kong can do, which is why it was seen more as a referendum for what's happening
for Beijing.
When it comes to Beijing, and the fact that normally it's 40% that vote for these elections. This time was plus 70% that voted for this election. There were no major incidents during the election in regards to the voting process, and it was surprising, so surprising that the current chief administrator Carrie Lang has said that she will not run for a second election. So it's a big deal what happened. And now it's what happens next.
Well, I would assume that they're going to hold an election for administrator, and it's still going to be a Beijing administrator. And so,
but let's talk a little bit about the symbolism, right? Because this is kind of what's sexy about this whole issue to begin with. The fact that these protests have been going on now for
6 months,
right?
Yeah.
And again, a fairly unarmed citizenry.
Chemistry did come into effect with cocktails.
Well, but violent protests still, nonetheless, right? A lot of people got hurt. There was even, some mortalities, because of the strong arm of the Chinese government. But yet, I think this could be incredibly powerful when we're looking at, especially what's continuing to happen in countries like Venezuela, right?
And I agree with that, if I may. I think that the issue of people putting their lives and welfare on the line to be able to speak their voice out is something that should speak to us greatly as Americans. Jonathan's statements on Venezuela are very true. When you had dissidents out there fighting against Maduro and putting their lives on the line there, my parents are Cuban exiles, so we left Cuba in 1960, so I know that very well. Whenever I think of the Chinese authoritarian regime, I remember the statistic that communist regimes have resulted in the deaths of 100 million people. 80% of those deaths come from the Chinese regime. Just recently, the Chinese regime celebrated their 70th anniversary, I guess, if you will, of their regime. And to me, that was a dark day, because it's been 70 years, over 1 million people a year killed because of that regime. And so the things that they oppose are the things that we as Americans should be celebrating.
We have to play a very delicate balance when it comes to in regards to the support of what's happening. There is a vote on the Senate and pass the Senate and pass the House to put more support for the pro-democracy changes in Hong Kong. Some people are saying that the president is overreaching when it comes to implementing an international law and getting involved. The Chinese are super upset about Trump right now.
Unanimous Senate support, I don't think there should be any critique on.
The critique is that the U.S. shouldn't be involving itself on another world stage in regards to another power, which again, they mess with us, we mess with them, everyone messes with everyone with their elections. But I will say this, our ambassador at like 3 a.m. in the morning, when they realized that they were going to lose, called the Chinese delegation, called the U.S. ambassador to come to Beijing, and basically read the riot act to figure out, hey, don't mess with what's going on, because again, this could be a domino effect. What happens in Hong Kong will then affect Macau will affect Taiwan will affect the northern regions of China. I've always said, I don't think China will look the same way in 10 years.
And with God willing, we can put, the Taiwanese government back in control of China. Let's just throw a grenade in this conversation to start. But, the Taiwanese government still sees themselves as the appropriate government, the legitimate government of China. They call themselves the government of China. They don't call themselves the Taiwanese government. So, maybe that's in the cards.
I don't think that's good. I don't know.
You're like, I'm not going there.
Another war, basically. That's what would happen if the U.S. really gets involved with the Chinese dissidents in that situation. I don't think China is going to invade Hong Kong. I honestly don't think that's going to happen. However, they've done it kind of before. So, would we see another Tiananmen Square? I don't think the world would ever allow that to happen again. China is too dependent on trade in regards to imports and exports. So I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Well, and I've been listening to Peter golly, I'm live on air and I'm forgetting names. But I've been listening to this foreign policy guy, and it's interesting because Macau, Hong Kong, none of them are Han Chinese.
No,
They're not. So there is an ethnic component to this that I think us as Americans don't really realize, because we think, oh, the Chinese are Chinese.
Sure.
It's like, no, the south of China, when the Han Chinese go south, the same thing. They get bit by bugs and die terrible deaths. It's just it's a tropical area where they're not normally being a 2,000, 3,000 year time frame, been in control of.
Yeah.
So.
But it's a great thing that happened in Hong Kong. There were a lot of young, new, first-time candidates that won sweeping elections. It's great for democracy. I think the U.S. should be pushing for democracy around the world. Do I think we should interfere, or that we should
Well, did we interfere here?
I don't have that
I don't
kind
think
of access to those
other
cables.
than just the Senate saying we unanimously support a pro-democracy movement, which doesn't sound that controversial.
Yeah,
to me.
but we did also do that on the eve of their election.
Well, of course. But that's not intervening. Intervening is going over there with
dumping money into
influencing.
I think one thing you mentioned, which is the ethnic challenges that have in every society. Often, as Americans, we take a look at other countries. Being a veteran, you know full well about, for example, Iraq and a lot of the differences there that a lot of Americans were unaware of, including in Afghanistan. And I think you would also mention economic engagement. I remember they used to call it, what was it, most favored nation status with China, and the whole idea was that we had give them most favored nation status or equal trading ground, then we can use our economic engagement to influence their values. I still believe in that, but you've got to be able to actually influence their values. So
I think that stopped.
And
you could say that
was Richard Nixon.
Yeah, and that was successful to a point. And I think especially with the current president of China, since he's taken over, part of what I've learned about China is that they used to swap leaders between an economic leader and an authoritative leader. Well, now they have an authoritative leader, and he's leader for life now. So, yeah.
Again, that's why I say I don't think China looks the same in 10 years. There are too many.
I don't know if China's there in 10 years, which is why I bring up the
demographic collision that they're having when it comes to just having more boys than women, not being able to find wives. I think the whole change in the politics in regards to the dear leader is a big deal. The Winnie the Pooh, in regards to what he looks like now, and I had to say it. I'm sorry. The fact that Winnie the Pooh is banned in China because some blog made a reference to the dear leader is hilarious, and I will make reference to it. But again, I think this would be considered the opening shot. What happens to Hong Kong if they push for it? Because again, there's supposed to be a 2-system, 1-country policy until 2047. So what happens now that we're in 2020? They're moving forward with human suffrage, which is in their basic law doctrine and in their version of the Constitution. What happens? The demonstrators are asking for independent inquiries in regards to the police, universal suffrage, the withdrawal of the bill, which did happen. So again, if they win more seats, there's another election coming up in 2021 that puts even more people involved into the selection of the executive committee person, because again, you're right, Beijing does approve the list of people that can run for executive chief executive, which is the problem. However, that list also gets approved by I think it's called the Electoral Committee, which is 1,177 votes. At the moment, the breakdown with the new election results is 600 for pro-democracy, 117 that are independent, 400 are considered, 400 pro-democracy, 117 independent, and then 600 pro-Beijing. That's a difference of 83 votes. That could easily be swayed in the next two elections. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, because what happens when Beijing gets pissed? And Beijing only knows how to use a hammer.
Well, like I said, it's interesting because if you look at the presidents of China over the years since Mao, it was an economic president, then an authoritative president, and they were limited to one term of 5 years, and they would bounce between was it Shanghai and Beijing as where the president would come from, because Shanghai is New York is the economic capital of China. And you would get an economic leader for 5 years, and then you'd go back to an authoritative leader. I think, like you're saying, it's China has an authoritative leader. He's there for life now. He can. I mean, I guess there's still elections every 5 years, but
well, let's also, not to, I do want to kind of wrap up the subject and move on, but also the economic implications of what is happening now here in the United States, and especially when you see a company, especially the size of Apple and the influences that it does have on the global economic market, moving a lot of their manufacturing operations here to the United States. And again, it may be segmenting, but still, that's going to impact the economy in China, don't you think?
But that's what you want. And we were talking about this earlier a little bit about economic persuasions. The way you hurt China is by removing exports and imports. Exports, so then they don't have enough money, so there's not many imports. China, I believe, was like almost 30 or 40% of GDP is reflective on imports and exports. If you bring down that number, it hurts them more than everything else. And they can still say, yeah, we're growing at 6%. Honestly, they've been making up those numbers for the last 10 years. And any economist will tell you, Beijing has not released a real GDP number in quarterly growth in a decade.
Well, and then you were bringing up the demographic problem, which is they're running out of 25-year-olds.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting about 25 to 35-year-olds is that they are the consumer base, right? They like
and
to
predominantly
buy.
women.
Yeah. No, them. It's predominantly men.
But
well, no, that's what I'm saying. They're losing the women.
Right.
The stark contrast in the population demographics, are pretty stark.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why the U.S. didn't go into recession a few years ago is because, and what pulled us out of recession is millennials. They buy phones, they drink boba, and they spend money on ridiculous things.
They have extra
expendable
money to spend.
Yeah, they have expendable income, which, so again, millennials, for better or worse, save the economy. They're moving into apartments, they're buying houses.
We're the second largest demographic group on top of that.
And so
if we weren't that, and we didn't happen at that time, then it would have
also
the economics would have been different.
Immigration has been helping a lot. Because
what are you talking about? Millennials are killing America's favorite restaurants. Have we not learned anything here?
Have you been to an Applebee's lately? Oh my gosh,
God.
$2 like Appletinis?
I won't
That is
admit to
dangerous.
whether or not I've been to an Applebee's lately. I prefer not to comment on that.
Millennials killed bookstores too, so I'm a big bookstore guy.
I'm
Yeah.
okay with that though.
But you know what? There was an article actually yesterday, I think, or the day before, about how all these small independent bookstores are not coming back.
Yeah,
I think there's something
'Cause
about
they're
the experience.
Nostalgia,
Yeah.
Well, the whole retail, I think just retail in general, like everything's going to be going through a
I was gonna
transformative
say,
change.
I read plenty on Audible.
See, I don't. I still buy my books and I read them physically. I read the hard paper. I'm old school. If it was up to me, we'd have Blockbuster still. So.
Oh,
That just been the end of your political career. My goodness.
Almost deserves an OK Boomer for that one.
Oh, yeah. That's a rough one.
Okay,
All right,
excerpt.
so moving on.
Excerpt.
That's right. So moving on to today's second topic, and of course the one topic that no one can seem to get enough about. Okay, because it's the one thing that all the major media outlets are talking about is the Trump impeachment, and of course. We'll do a quick talk about the updates on that, and then again, speculation on how this is going to affect not only the Democrat primary, but the effect it's having on the 2020 election overall. I know Anibal, you've been digging into some of the numbers here, and so far, I mean, it continues to be Donald Trump's narrative that he is untouchable, that this stuff just rolls right off of him, right?
It's literally the combination of Teflon and a wet duck. Like nothing is going through. And then you hear, so the testimony comes on. Oh, this is, and then the testimony finishes. This is a bombing, an explosion.
Bombshell report.
Bombshell report. This is the end of his presidency. And then you wait 45 minutes into the next hearing,
and it's the same
and
thing.
It's like, no, he told me he wants nothing. He doesn't need anything. Just tell him to do what he campaigned on. And you're like, oh my gosh.
I thought you were going more the realm of they use bombshell for literally every single interview. I'm like, you can only have one bombshell. It's like you're overusing the term.
I mean, for that, I go back to the 2016 election when you had all these bombshells on then candidate Trump. Yeah. Things that would end anybody else's political career, and that, in my opinion, should end people's career. Like when you, for example, make fun of John McCain for being a POW, take on the Khan family, a Gold Star family, like it did. Make the comments about Russia, and we have our own killers. This is just pre-election, but yet it didn't end him. He seems to have that comment of his about being able to shoot somebody on the streets of New York and still have that support, I think is true. I'll leave it to people to debate the morality of that, but objectively speaking, I think that's so.
Well, do you think that it was just an analogy that he was using in regards to the?
Oh,
and
yeah.
This is what
I don't mean literally.
Yeah, and this is what
kill
people
somebody.
say. The reason why a lot of these things are not sticking to Trump is because he never lied to us and said that he was a wholesome, only one time married with 2.5 kids and a white picket fence. He never lied to us about that. And every politician, in regards to what has been happening in that time, has always lied. And so I think that's something that people are really liking about what Trump has taken on.
Yeah, I think the best analysis of this has been, in 2012, Republicans ran what they thought was the most clean-cut, white as snow candidate in Mitt Romney, and Democrats tore him down and threw mud on him and made him look like a terrible person. So it's like, okay, well, we'll just run the most terrible person we can find at this point.
I mean, they said that Mitt Romney would put black people back into chains. Joe Biden said that. And the fact is that if that's the level that you're going to bring the most respected man that ever probably ran for president, and going to say that, he's putting women in binders and he's riding animals on top of the car. Like, the Democrats we're trying to destroy him as an individual. And the Republic was like, we're just done. We're going to put someone else that's going to be able to fight back, because Republicans for the last 2 or 3 cycles have felt that we've never been able to punch back. And now we have someone that punches back.
Well, the other thing, and I'm sorry, really quick, but I think where this has backfired on Democrats has been because they were so willingly able to and successfully able to vilify someone as clean cut as Mitt Romney. I think it's desensitized people to anything that they've said about Trump.
I think with that, if you take a look at the attacks, the remarkable attacks that President Obama took, for example, with the birther issue, those were, I think, paled in or were substantially different than what Senator Romney went through. I think that whenever I think about Donald Trump, I ask my Republican friends to think about how most of Republicans thought about Donald Trump in 2015. And it wasn't just political stuff that candidates were saying to attack him, like often happens. I always go, you were right in 2015. And he hasn't changed. He's gotten worse, and it's because of this. I go back to what the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, which is defining deviancy down, that when a society's ability or capacity to combat a form of deviancy has withered or tattered away, then they change what the standard of deviancy is to accommodate the new reality. I would respectfully say that that's what happened to the United States with President Trump.
Are you saying that we flipped that decisively from an Obama administration to a Trump administration? I feel that the nation wanted something different.
Oh, apparently
and they were not wanting it. And also, when it comes to Republicans in the nation, currently, I think the polls are 95% of Republicans support the president and are supporting him right now. Just polls yesterday from Emerson, which 538 says is the second best polling average in the nation in regards to any polls, are saying now black support for the president has doubled from 17% to 34%. Hispanic has doubled from 14% to 38%. This is an anomaly, and independents have increased. This is an anomaly because, again, you are not the American people want to see results.
Well, but
this
we're
whole
also
show of impeachment is just that, is, like I said before, kabuki theater, and because of that, people are getting upset that the Democrats, who were supposed to be running on something different, are running on nothing. You're going to say orange man bad? If that's your argument as a Democrat, then you're going to lose the support of the entire nation again.
I think the hand was forced with regards to impeachment. I'm one of those type of people that, I don't want to see even impeachment efforts. I mean, we had impeachment with Andrew Johnson. We had it 110 years later with President Nixon, 25 years later with President Bill Clinton. It's a rarity, and it speaks a lot to our present political system, right? That in the last 20 years, we will have had 2 viable impeachment proceedings against presidents, which is that things are very acute, things are very divided, to say the least.
Let me jump in here real quick, Chris, because 2 things. One, I think what I've told people oftentimes is that what we are seeing is an equal and opposite reaction to the Obama administration.
Yes.
Okay, they found somebody that was an anomaly for them. We have found somebody that was an anomaly for Republicans. Okay, now we'll probably not see another candidate like Barack Obama in our lifetime. We may never see another candidate like President Trump in our lifetime. And I think that has a lot of interesting impacts on these parties, because what we're seeing is we saw a lot of tribalism under President Obama, where, I mean, like, he could do no wrong. And I think we're seeing that equal and opposite reaction for President Trump and the Republican Party. Now, is that healthy? No, I don't think that's healthy at all. But that is what it is. And anybody that speaks out against the president, is seen as someone who is, not worthy or lesser than because, or not faithful to the party and its platform, simply because you may disagree on the president's behavior or something he said or something he did, or maybe even a policy issue.
Well, yeah, and that was, you stole my thunder literally in that sense, because it was pretty much what I was saying is that I think we will look back in time and look at both of these presidencies, and I think the beginning of the millennia, and say none of this is good for and I think this is your point, right? Is like, none of this is, the tribalism is not good for the discourse of the country. It's not good for solving the problems we have and moving the country forward. But
you have to let it happen.
I mean, at the same time, like, this is we're as a country, we're just kind of going through it. We're having our moment. We're having a moment here, and we need to console ourselves and figure out where we're going next.
When President Obama was elected, you had this pushback from the Republican Party that split with the Tea Party and then with the old guard with the Republican Party. They were able to figure it out, come up with a candidate after two cycles, and then they were able to get back in power. I mean, at the end of the day, Obama, during his tenure, lost over 1,000 House seats throughout the country.
A lot of midterms
were lost. And so now you're having the complete opposite happen. But on the Democrat side, you have the split. I don't want to use the word Antifa for the version of what the Tea Party was for Republicans and Democrats.
No.
But there is a splinter in
George
regards,
Soros next.
I know. But there is a split within the Democrat Party. And you can use AOC and some of the other ones as legitimate drivers of impeachment. I remember for many months, Nancy Pelosi was like, it's not going to work if you try to impeach, and then she got pushed into doing this.
I still don't think Nancy thinks it's going to work. I think Nancy arm was twisted into this situation.
And we were talking
there's
about
no out.
We were just talking about this before air. So right before we went on air, we were talking about this. Is what I think is Nancy's play at this point, because I do think that she is a Biden supporter for president. Is I think she'll find a way to pass it through the House to, number one, save her own political career, but she'll allow as many Democrats as she can, vulnerable Democrats, to vote present as she can.
I think we talked about 29 Democrats can vote present,
we gotta
and
look that
still
up,
be able to pass impeachment.
And there's something also that's important. We were talking about a reaction. There are reactions in history. You take a look at John F. Kennedy being elected after 8 years of Eisenhower, the new guard. I always say that Jimmy Carter was a reaction to Richard Nixon. Obviously, President Obama was a reaction to President Bush. Whereas President Trump was a reaction to Donald Trump, or strike that, Donald Trump was a reaction to President Obama. I think that it goes further than that. I think that historically in our country, if you take a look at historical figures, people like, George Wallace in '68, people like Huey Long, people like Father Coughlin, people like Joe McCarthy, there has always been that populist extreme streak that has never been able to gain a foothold in the American presidency until 2016.
But you can use the same as Obama.
No. I would argue that point. He's onto something, but I don't think you can say never. I say you take it back to 1824 with Andrew Jackson.
Yes,
sure.
And it's funny that Trump idolizes Andrew Jackson in that way. Sure. Is that he sees himself as an Andrew Jackson. He sees himself as a populist candidate, and he doesn't think there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah. It's the pendulum.
So I don't think there's necessarily
it's the pendulum swinging the opposite direction.
But I mean, should there be anything wrong with a people's president?
I would respectfully suggest he's not. A populism with, let's say, William Jennings Bryan is one thing. There's different forms of populism, and reactive populism that takes advantage of our worst historical tendencies as Americans. Historically, we have our best tendencies, we have our worst tendencies. I think is a different form of populism that Donald Trump champions.
So populism that agrees with your
political position.
Policy
no,
standpoint.
I'm not a William Jennings.
You're going
I'm not. No, for example, Ross Perot was a populist, but I wouldn't put him in that category.
Right, but you can't.
He was very mainstream.
He was very wealthy, and that's why he got to do what he got to do.
Regardless, I mean, if Ross Perot had ran, in the Democratic Party, he potentially could have won that nomination. And
it was an odd year, '92.
Yeah. And now. I don't think he would have won the presidency. I think we would have had another 4 years of old man Bush.
Yeah.
So I think you can't really use Perot as a third.
Yeah, Clinton
a third road doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't really add to the math. Here.
I think that the main idea that I'm trying to get across in my cold, isolated voice here, I mean cold in the sense that I'm suffering from a cold, is that to me Donald Trump is not historically normal. And he shouldn't be accepted. We have tried to normalize time and time again this man's behavior after incidents. You take, for example, his statements, I'll never forget, after Charlottesville. People universally condemned him, and then we move on.
What are the comments that you're talking about?
You admit it.
Well, talking about both sides. I mean, when Senator Orrin Hatch...
But did you hear the rest of that statement?
You're split.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But would you... You're saying that he's different, that he's abnormal.
In a bad way.
In a bad way.
Some different is good.
All right. Why does history begin with him? Like, I don't really see how he's different, especially with the fact that it was baked into the cake. You were saying that we knew who Trump was. Both of you were saying, both of you agree that we knew exactly who Trump was before he came down the escalator. And certainly before he was ever sworn in as president, we knew exactly who this guy was, and 62 million Americans were like, "Yeah, that's my guy." All right, now you can say ill-founded, maybe,
Yeah.
but he won.
And I want to make something clear, which is I look forward to getting, because I tell people, look, my Republican friends, I have no problem with engaging with people. I have no problem with my Republican friends. Donald Trump, I got a big problem with. And I look forward to the time when we can have the Republican Party historically of small government, free enterprise, a strong national defense, traditional values, et cetera. To me, by the way, Donald Trump at his heart is not even a Republican. He takes on, the guy's a con artist.
Half the Democrats in Tampa are not Democrats. Let's just be honest on that one also. So a New York, and I say this all the time, a New York Republican is nowhere near a Southern Republican, and that's just fact.
Sure.
But this is the thing. So, to have arrived at a Trump, because yes, was he a response, an equal and opposite response to President Obama? Yes, but he is the product of the 2010 Tea Party that was, like we did here in Florida, looking for the outsider. They were looking for the person who was not a product of the political environment, of the political swamp, as the president likes to say, someone who was not a career politician. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. And just like we got Rick Scott here in Florida, we got Donald Trump because he wasn't a candidate, because he wasn't in a box, because he wasn't scripted, and so it was like beyond all the flaws, he fit all of the boxes that people were looking for something different.
And to that, I'll say, and what came after a Rick Scott governorship was, a Ron DeSantis governorship, who is now polling in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I think,
even the Orlando Sentinel is praising him.
I think as much as the outrage might be for Trump, I think, whoever succeeds him, assuming he wins re-election, whoever succeeds him in 2024, assuming that's a Republican, would be a much more mainstream, much more genteel.
The pendulum swings back.
Genteel.
And I think Governor DeSantis has been smart politically, which is, and this is just the way I saw it, was Governor Scott says, listen, I'm going to, make things acute. I'm going to be a hardline conservative. I'm not going to care about the other side because I can spend $100 million a campaign. And he always happens to just barely get by a re-election. I think Governor DeSantis knows he doesn't have that liberality. So when I use the term hate here, I don't mean it literally, but he's making the opposition hate him less or dislike him less. And politically, that's really smart.
He's doing a great job. But again, going back to where we started, I think impeachment was a very difficult move for the Democrats to make. I think we said this earlier, the only thing the Democrats need to do to make sure that they win 2020 was not run someone crazy or not act crazy. And they're acting crazy. Right now, if the House pushes for impeachment and does the whole 49 or 29 and passes one.
But think that's smart. That's smart from Pelosi's standpoint, right? Because she ties up all these senators. She ties up all these Democratic senators
of hearings, and they can't even ask questions. They're just sitting. Every senator has to stay in Washington.
And who's not in the Senate that's running for president?
Biden.
Well, see, this is where I think we need to take advantage. Well, that's a perfect
We
segue.
agree on something.
That's a perfect segue, actually, into the fact that I think this is a great opportunity for us to take advantage of our guest. Because again, it's easy for us to fall inside the bubble, and we all heard the same testimonies along with the media, and you got polar opposite responses as to who thought they did well and who thought that, let's say in particular, Sondland, what he did or didn't say. It seemed like both sides thought that he favored that his testimony favored them, and so coming from the other side of the aisle, Councilman Viera, what was your overall impression of the hearing so far, and do you think that they're accomplishing what they intended to accomplish?
I think there's a lot of micro information that has to be disseminated outside. I think if you get down to the basic nitty gritty, is that there appears to be an admission that the president, in dealing with Ukraine, leveraged funds that were appropriated for aid to a country that's under attack, essentially an ally, for a politically partisan purpose. That's troubling at the very least, and I think a lot of people have admitted that. I think if you isolate that, that's very, very morally troubling, and if any other president did that, that there would be hell to pay.
But wouldn't you consider that more conjecture than actual firsthand accounts?
And
because again, I don't think we've heard one person make the comment, I heard the president say this when he was talking to me.
I heard it from a friend.
I heard it from a friend. Yeah.
Heard it from a friend.
I would suggest
they had to change the rules just to allow the whistleblower to actually to bring up a testimony, because originally it was you had to be firsthand information. He had to have heard this. He had to be in the room. He had to be on the call. They had to change the rules to that secondhand testimony.
I would suggest this. Look, there is nothing, and I go back to my original point, that the president or his allies can do that would draw wholesale condemnation from Republicans who, again, engaged in, with all due respect to my Republican friends, and it's a moral relativism. You take a look at for example, calling General Mattis, an overrated general. Recently, the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., talking about Colonel Vindman and calling him a bureaucrat, and it's stuff like that I'm like, how can you get away with that morally or politically? But I go back to first base on this.
We should take each incident on its face, and one thing I'm and I get flack on my own side for this is when he called General Mattis that, I was on Mattis' side for that, that. No, you don't. That was wrong of the president to do. But a lot of this is the president just, he likes to poke holes, and he likes to push everyone's buttons. And is it good for the soul of the country? Is it good for political discourse? The answer is no, but we knew that. We knew that when we voted for him.
And you have much more standing than I, obviously, having worn our country's uniform. But I say there's certain holes you don't poke. Like, for example, I go back, for me, strike 1, 2, and 3, when he made those comments on John McCain, I don't get it. I remember watching a fabulous documentary on PBS. I think it was, I don't recall the name, but they were talking to, who's the gentleman running for the Senate from North New Hampshire, Republican. He's an advisor to the president.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name.
But he was talking about how he mentions this attack on Senator McCain to Trump. He goes, you got to apologize. And the president goes, according to this gentleman, nope. And he goes, that's when I love the guy, because he doesn't back down. I'm like, you shouldn't just back down from that. You should have never say that. And if you say that, you got no business running for dog catcher, much less president of the United States.
But I think,
my opinion,
automatically going to that extreme just because someone has a different opinion of someone else is why people, again, Vanity Fair run a report today talking about how majority Republicans and independents are, what the verbiage was, lots of people don't like Trump, but they're still prepared to vote for him. And I think that's the position where a lot of people are right now.
And I think, as much as you're making the moral and philosophical argument that I could be actually very sympathetic to and potentially agree with, is at the same time, like, we knew who Trump was, and we still voted because we're like,
because you gave us Hillary.
Well, no. I don't.
Because you gave us Hillary.
No, not because that's necessarily the what was at hand, but it's also, okay, if I'm gonna put someone in charge of the country and the direction of the country, I want someone who punches everything.
Yes.
Everything's a nail to him.
Yeah.
Everything. He's a hammer and everything's a nail. He punches and punches and punches, and he punches everything. And sometimes he punches a baby, and that's an ugly day. And it's our job to call him out when he punches the baby.
But nobody calls him out. I
People
remember.
call him out.
Nobody.
All the time.
No.
Now it might not resonate of him losing support because again, I
Because
don't like
again,
everything
I'll
he
call
does.
him out.
I'll call him out all the time, but I will not vote for him because again, you're giving me the other.
You're giving me the
I
policy
remember
results
saying this.
Oh my! That's the thing. It's the policy. I could care less what he tweets about. I want conservative judges.
Sure.
I want strong immigration. I want economic development and economic growth. Everything that he promised, the wall to everything else, is being done.
Sure.
God forbid we lose and this is not to say anything about Ruth Bader Ginsburg because I think that girl is a thug and she'll live and she won't die anytime. But in my
she got a cold over the weekend though.
Yeah, that's what scared me. That scared me because I was like, I love her on the court. But my thing is this: if someone else resigns or something else, he's gonna put another very conservative judge that every Republican loves.
In effect, he is probably the most influential conservative president. He makes Ronald Reagan look like FDR in terms of what he accomplished, and that's a fact.
And I'm happy about that.
And on a lot of issues, I mourn that. But I again say, I remember saying this in 2016, that Ronald Reagan's going to get 10% of the write-in vote, because I thought there were a lot of Republicans who were going to say, you know what? He doesn't represent my morals. He doesn't represent the ethics, etc. Again, there's certain things that you shouldn't poke at.
Yeah,
right?
Lewis, but the stakes were too high to elect Hillary Clinton. Because at the end of the day, I don't think that the conversations we'd be having about Hillary Clinton would be that different. Maybe
yes, they would.
Wait, hold on. But not.
Please.
I'm not talking about the tweets and a lot of the personality issues. I'm talking about the policy issues. The fact of all the controversy with the Clinton Global Initiative. I'm talking about even with things happening right now with Ukraine. I'm talking about things like that happened under her while she was in the State Department. I think she had major flaws, and there was a lot of potential corruption happening already under the time that she served in the Obama administration that would have bled right into her administration.
It goes even before that. My mother remembers when she got kicked out of the Watergate investigations for leaking. This woman remembers that one thing, and again, if she remembers, a lot of old people remember. We're not going to vote for that woman.
I quote Bill Kristol, which is Trumpism corrupts. And it does. To me, it corrupts. It's a corrosive, decaying nature on the soul of our country. I am very, I swear to God, y'all, I'm very moralistic whenever it comes to Donald Trump.
You're making the moral argument.
It's fine.
And I think we both agree with you there.
We both completely agree with you. No one's arguing that. However,
no one's arguing that Trump is
yeah.
the Messiah leader that's going to lead. Like, no, we know he's a big pile of mud.
You have to give the Americans the due process to understand that they might not agree with him morally, but they agree with him politically. I am not going to look at Donald Trump, nor should anyone look at Donald Trump or any president as a moral figure. That's not how it goes, because at the end of the day, there is a separation, and I shouldn't be looking at my morality. I look at my pastor, I look at my family, I look at my father for the moral guidance, and I, as a man of my household, am the moral compass for my household.
See, man, but it's just, look, that there are certain lines that shouldn't be crossed, and now we have Republicans talking as if they're, moral libertarians. There is a moral dynamic, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, I don't care. There is a moral dynamic to serving in office. I'm not saying you've got to be St. Francis of Assisi, but you also don't got to be a hedonist. You know what I mean? Who punches back on for example, again, and I continue to go back to John McCain, because I will never, ever, ever, ever let that go. Saying that this man who endured 5.5 years of torture at a Hanoi Hilton was not a hero because he was captured. What kind of a person says that?
Well, what kind of a person is more than willing to allow babies to be aborted without a heart, with the first heartbeat? I mean, that's the extreme.
I'm not talking about abortion,
and I don't want to talk about it either. But I don't want to get into.
That's what's on the notes.
It wasn't on the notes, but the moment we talk about morality in these kind of conversations, again, states are pushing back. Some states are saying no. As soon as there's a heartbeat, you can't have it. Some are saying that the baby can be born, and if the mother doesn't want it or something's wrong, then they can abort the baby. Why there has to be laws now that say that if you do some form of testing and you find that there is a Down syndrome with the baby.
All right, but we're getting way off topic. We're getting way off topic.
It does.
But he's making the case. He's just morality. Making the morality case is that anytime you're trying to use morality to govern, and yes, both sides are there is an implicit morality that goes on to your policy points.
Sure.
Well, look, to save the point that Anibal was trying to make was that there's a difference between holding our elected officials to a moral standard and then holding ourselves as a nation to a moral standards when it comes to policies like abortion, okay? And I think there's a big difference because, again, we're not electing these people to be our spiritual leaders or to be some sort of exemplary figure. We're sending them to be our representatives, even for the president to be a representative of the people's will and what they want to see policy-wise. We're not looking for them to be an exemplary human being. We just want them to get the things done that they promised us when they were running for office.
I would suggest, too, that the president, in my opinion, doesn't even believe in what I would historically call American exceptionalism. I still remember his comment during the campaign when he was talking, I think it was to Bill O'Reilly, about Russia and saying, we have our own killers. What do you think? We're that innocent. We were talking about China, saluting and congratulating the Chinese on the 70th anniversary of their revolution. May God help us. What kind of a president does this? I suggest to you that man is wholly ignorant about the history of our country. This has nothing to do with his policy.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that statement.
That's terrible.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, but you surround himself with the people.
If you guys would give us someone to vote for besides someone crazy, then the argument would be
give me Tulsi Gabbard as your nominee.
Give me Tulsi
Gabbard as your nominee. And I may have a moment of reflection.
Oh my God! In a heartbeat, there.
I remember the 2016 election, man. I mean, I remember as a Democrat looking at Jeb Bush and going, "That guy's going to clean up. He's an honorable man. He's got a beautiful family. Él habla español. He's a faithful Catholic. He's got a Florida, all these good things." Now, Marco Rubio, same thing. Beautiful family. Had a wonderful legislative aide working for him, et cetera, et cetera. And then the Republicans chose John Kasich. Heck, even Chris Christie. Heck, even the chair we're sitting on, I think, has more morality than Donald Trump. Choose this chair.
But all those candidates, the moment they get one punch, fell apart. Jeb Bush was running a campaign that was ridiculous from the start. Their campaign headquarters in Tampa alone was in the back of a airport express center, which meant that it wasn't. And then 3 weeks later, he's gone because he couldn't do anything. All the money in the world doesn't matter. Hillary Clinton had hundreds of millions of dollars to run for, and it didn't work because she was a flawed candidate.
Sure.
If you want to get Bill Clinton, if you want to get Trump out of office, give us someone that we can vote for. And the Democrats cannot do that right now.
All right, so on that note, sorry, just because we're kind of running out of time here, I want to go ahead and move the ball because that's actually a perfect segue.
You're having fun.
That's a perfect segue into our next topic, which is actually the Democratic primary. Big news. Michael Bloomberg jumping into the Democratic primary.
Hey, another billionaire.
I mean, and to me, obviously Elizabeth Warren is already hitting him up on being wealthy, but the truth of the matter is that, is he a real deal or is he a distraction? Like, what's his game plan? Is this legit or is he basically trying to just hand this election back over to Trump?
I don't really care. I just know I put a bunch of money on betting that he would jump in the race, and now he jumped in the race. So I'm very happy about him jumping in the race.
So you're buying dinner is what you're saying, right? Is that what you're saying?
Whoa! I got a 3-year-old to feed. You know that.
He's not with gambling money.
He's a fascinating figure. I mean, again, it's so funny. I remember looking over. I read a lot of books, and I remember looking over my book collection from the 1990s and early 2000s, and just going, no rules apply after Donald Trump. He broke every rule politically. Yeah. So with Bloomberg, man, I don't know. My son, who's here, maybe he'll run for president and win. I don't know anymore.
Has to be 35.
Yeah, exactly. But you never know.
Sorry,
kiddo.
But look, honestly, again, with not getting too deep into it, but to that point, I think it's a good thing that Trump has broken the mold in terms of who can and can run for president, because it is supposed to be an open system. Anyone should be allowed to run for president as long as they meet the age restriction and the citizenship restriction.
I think the question
why not? Why not have more business people run?
The question that you're asking really is, why did Bloomberg join into the race? And the question would be that there's no confidence in the current lineup of Democrats in the race at the moment. Even the fact that he jumped in, which means that, he doesn't think Joe Biden is going to be able to win the national election. But then who is he taking away from? Upper class, white liberals.
To do the analysis, I was looking at this earlier today, and the analytics.
By the way, this is all Latino class. cast, by the way.
Yeah.
It is.
Hey, look at
Oh, I didn't know Chris
that.
was
We should
Latino.
talk about Latino voters. That's a
They're voting for Trump.
They're voting for Trump.
Listen, it's funny.
38%.
If I may, because a lot of Democrats, yo soy un cubano, I'm a Cuban American. My parents left Cuba in 1960 as refugees, and a lot of Democrats and a lot of just people in general misunderstand Hispanic voters. Hispanic voters, Latino voters
Not
are
on
hit
the
up
list.
in different categories, and there's a lot of different influences on the Hispanic
yeah.
vote. Work, family, religious faith, including Catholicism, including a good number of Hispanics converting to becoming evangelical Protestants. There's a lot of different things. They lean, they lean Democratic, but it's probably that. I believe that poll 65-35. A lot of people see it. To me, you've got to appeal to Hispanics through the American dream and upward mobility, because I think that's what a Hispanic.
Well, they are living the American dream.
Yeah.
All of us.
My
are living,
family-
all of us are living the
Thank
American
God.
dream
Yeah.
right here.
The
Sorry, that was
no,
a
yeah,
crazy
the
tangent.
analytics on Bloomberg.
Sorry,
Let's go back to a billionaire white guy.
Just lost it. He's probably going to take some votes away from Biden. I think Buttigieg is it's his turn to get piled on. So everyone's going to.
Okay, but my
No, my point being is that it's Biden's going to get I think he's going to go down in the polls. I think Bloomberg's going to take from Buttigieg. I think he's going to take from Biden. And either way, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out of Iowa and who comes out of New Hampshire. But whoever comes out of Iowa and New Hampshire is DOA as soon as they arrive in South Carolina.
Well, that's because Pete Buttigieg is polling 0% in the African American community. We have Joe Biden got decimated with the rollout of the Hispanic outreach with him. The Latino rollout was a disaster. Todos con Biden. If you go onto Google and you type that in for the website, it directs you to a Trump website, because the person that was running that rollout did not get the URL for Todos con Biden, nor did he get the Twitter account. So it was a disaster. Elizabeth Warren can't stop lying, and who else is in there that we could talk?
Senator Harris.
She had a good night. I will say, out of the most boring of the debates
and the least watched,
the sleepiest, most
I didn't even
boringly.
see it.
There we go.
I think it was less than 4 million people watched.
Again, I had money on it, so. But yeah, she had a good night. Out of the least watched debate, she had a good night. I'll give her that, but it's not gonna change her numbers. It's not moving the needle.
But for no one to attack Buttigieg about the Douglas plan,
Well,
I was reading about that.
Which is talking about the African American community. Out of the 400 plus people that supported, that wrote their names, and everything, half of them are white. Of the 4 major activists, 3 of them said that they did not agree, and one of them said, "Do not use my name on it." And so, it was just a horrible rollout altogether, and not one question.
Well, and the other thing that came out was, of course, him giving a speech to a Tea Party group back in, I think, 2010, 2011, something like that. And that, obviously, at the grassroots level has hurt him big time. But, again, wanting to take advantage of our guest today, Lewis, you said you're supporting Vice President Biden.
Yep.
And so my question, though, to you is, being that the Bidens are also very much at the center of these impeachment hearings, and now with the revelation of Hunter Biden's extramarital affair, or not extramarital because he wasn't married at the time, but he was dating his brother's wife. I mean, all that mess. Do you think that that's going to hurt him?
Well, Hunter Biden, there was Beau Biden, who was a military veteran and obviously died of brain cancer. God rest his soul. I know Hunter, just from reading about Vice President Biden, has always had a lot of personal challenges. I've read substance abuse, a lot of different challenges. To the extent that'll hurt the vice president, can people manufacture a scandal with anything? Yes, but there's a lot of politicians. I'm not going to name names. I mean, there's public that have had challenges with their kids. Now, mind you, listen, to the extent that challenge would involve something interfering with their public office, such as the allegations with regards to Ukraine and the former vice president, that's not a challenge. That's a challenge to the candidate that Biden obviously has to address. But in terms of his personal challenges, I know that he dated, I believe, the widow of Beau Biden, inner family issues.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Biden would be a pretty darn strong candidate. I think with Hispanics he'll do well, but I think he's the strongest candidate to beat President Trump, and he reflects to me the mainstream of what I call the traditional FDR, Truman, Kennedy, et cetera, Democratic.
Okay, but
I agree with
yeah.
that, but I don't think the Democrats
you
want
think
that.
Kennedy would be on that stage?
Oh yeah, I think John F. Kennedy. If you look at him historically, he wanted to do the war on poverty. He supported Medicare. He did do the.
You think he'd support Medicare for all?
Medicare was originally intended because the first person to champion Medicare for all was Harry Truman when he proposed national health care in 1946 as part of his Fair Deal. It was scaled back under Kennedy and Johnson to be just for senior citizens. If you look at the writings of different people in the Johnson administration, that was meant to be something that would eventually be expanded over years because the momentum at the time before Ronald Reagan was for expanded government. Even Richard Nixon proposed a universal health care plan, something more market oriented.
Nixon proposed a UBI at one point.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So, and he created the EPA, OSHA, et cetera. So it was a different time politically. John Kennedy, I think if you classify him today, would be a moderate Democrat who would be out of step with his party, but no way that guy would be a Republican. Not just because he was a Kennedy. On domestic issues, he was very, very progressive, including civil rights, where at the time you had a lot of liberal Republicans who were very, very strong on that issue as well.
I could agree with that. Do you think someone like if Biden ran a race, if Biden was JFK, if he ran that race from 1960 on policy, could you think he'll win the nomination with that platform?
Adapted in its time.
Yeah, adapted to its time.
No, because John F. Kennedy, in my opinion, God rest his soul, was more restrained on the culture issues of the day. I mean, if you look at the March on Washington, I think it was in '63, Congressman John Lewis was going to do a speech attacking John F. Kennedy because he wasn't pushing forth the civil rights legislation as hard as he should. And it ultimately, it passed under President Johnson. But John F. Kennedy, I think, was waiting until after he was reelected in '64 to kind of push that. That's what I think. I'm obviously not being there. But, Kennedy for me in our own time could be classified as a centrist Democrat who would be out of step, but certainly not a Republican.
Well, and you keep saying he's out of step. So
exactly.
Could he win a nomination with today's party?
In 2020, no, just like he couldn't win it in 1972 when George McGovern won
I think that's where we're having the conversation
and
is that
things shift.
And that's what we're saying.
Right.
The current
and that's
field is very much we just don't know where the center is anymore when it comes to the field. And you have these Elizabeth Warrens, you have the Bernie Sanders, who is still an independent. I don't understand how he's running as a Democrat when he's
not
independent.
I don't think he's registered.
He's not registered.
Well, but back
Democrat.
to Joe Biden. I mean, he's currently on the downtrend, right? His fundraising is dropping off.
Significantly.
His numbers are dropping off. Do you think there is a second act? Do you think there's a spike coming, or is time running out on his campaign?
Because again, as soon as impeachment starts in the Senate, it's nothing but Hunter Biden and the Bidens.
No, well, but at the same time, he's the only one not trapped in the Senate chamber.
He will be trapped in the Senate chamber. And
subject-wise, he will be.
Yeah, he will be.
Subject-wise, but he can be on the ground.
Yeah, but he's also only bringing 12 people into these rallies. So it's not like he's a Bernie Sanders who will be stuck in Washington. That's bringing in thousands of people for his rallies. That's what I'm saying. I would if I was a Democratic strategist, I would tell you to let the impeachment fail in the vote so then you guys can keep on campaigning. Because, again, you trap Biden as a topic for the next 6 weeks into 2020, and that's the problem they're going to have as Democrats. Again, I like the idea.
Pelosi has a hard decision in front of her. I don't know what I'd do in there.
I would just from a strategy. I would read AOC the Riot Act.
I'm sure she's done that a couple times.
I just think that when you take a look at somebody like Vice President Biden, I think he resonates. He may not resonate. I mean, President Obama recently did. I think it was an interview where he talked about Twitter liberalism. Trying to get the most likes and this and that. That doesn't reflect not just the Democratic Party. It doesn't reflect certainly the American voter.
Yeah, but the president
got reality
eviscerated for those comments.
We were talking earlier. We were
by the Twitter, which does not represent.
But they are the loudest people speaking.
Yes.
Oh, I know
that. I know.
We were talking earlier how one president is one president is the the polar opposite of the next, is the
Sure.
equal and opposite reaction to the next. And by that measure, you know, who in that field, I mean, I know you're partial to Biden, but who in that field would be the polar opposite of Trump? Because it sounds like a lot of this Twitter stuff is the Democrats trying to have a populist candidate because they saw that worked. Yeah,
in a different kind of populism to a degree. But I think there's two ways of looking at the opposite of President Trump. Number one is with the morality issue, where I think, in my opinion, Joe Biden fits that bill, which is he's a person who connects with people, et cetera, et cetera. Then the other one is the ideology, which is that you react to Trumpism, which is, in my opinion, you know, caters to far right-wing sentiments by going on the opposite side. And I don't think that politically that's the way to do. A progressive Democrat can win, but the term progressive has become almost a term of art. To me, Joe Biden's a progressive. You know what I mean?
He'll never say it.
But in other words, is he a left wing?
He's not a socialist. He's a progressive.
Yeah, he's a progressive, not a socialist.
He is. He certainly is a traditional. Again, a person who uses government to in his eyes, benefit the general welfare. Right, through healthcare programs, retirement security, labor, et cetera, all those type of things.
And I agree with all of that, but I think the family issues is going to bring problems with him. This country hates one thing over anything else, and that's nepotism. And the fact that you have Joe Biden's son sitting on, again, Joe Biden used to tally that he rides the Amtrak train into D.C. every single day. Well, no one knows that his son was sitting on the board of Amtrak. He's sitting on the board of other boards in China and other boards in Ukraine. When you're making more in 1 month than my wife as a teacher makes an entire year, people don't like that. And that's a reality of things.
If the 2016 election tells us anything, it's that people got no problem with it. Not stipulating that Joe Biden's family does that. I don't know. I know there's allegations out there. But I mean, with President Trump, you know, and nepotism with his family, holy smokes and saints alive.
But he didn't lie about it. And that's where the Teflon thing happens.
He doesn't have to, because Republicans, again, Daniel Patrick Moynihan defining deviancy down. You know, that's where I go back to. I almost sound like a preacher, man.
All right, so again, now that we've hit the 1 hour mark, and I can feel the ladies of the program rolling their eyes back home as they watch this.
The school, they're all off. So they shouldn't have a problem. They have no
school tomorrow.
Yeah, but they're still going to have.
That's why my son's here.
We have an don't say the name. We have an underground teacher support system for Trump supporters.
We can use our first name.
They always make comments because we're running so late because they have to go to school. They have to work the following day.
The fact that we've run over an hour, I can assure you, is going to bother her. But nonetheless, again, I'd like to get through, I guess, another issue or two, if that's okay, Councilman.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, because again, especially this next one, obviously directly related to you, which is why we've been wanting to have you on the show for some time now. Lots going on at the city of Tampa. Honestly, I think so far, Castor has been, you know, a pretty good continuation of Mayor Buckhorn's administration. I think there's a lot of excitement here in the city. You know, there's a lot to be proud about. You know, and certainly I continue to say that moving here in 2006 was the best decision I've ever made. And so give us a little bit of insight first as to kind of what you're working on. What priorities do you see? What's the dynamic like with the new mayor? And how's the city council kind of playing ball here?
Sure, and thank you, Jonathan. You know, we got Mayor Castor. She's been in office for, I guess, 6 months. And, you know, she's starting to show, I guess, what her agenda is. I think basically with Mayor Castor, it's going to be a return to neighborhoods, which is under Bob Buckhorn, who I think was a very good mayor. One of our friends, Mike Griffin, always tells me that Bob Buckhorn was the right man for the right time and the right place. And I agree with that. I think he did great things for Tampa. But I think Mayor Castor says, okay, we've invested a lot in downtown. Let's take a look at our neighborhoods. Let's take a look at parks and recreation. Let's take a look at our roads. Let's take a look at issues like code enforcement, basic nitty-gritty, you know, filling up potholes type issues within neighborhoods that had, in the eyes of many, taking a back seat, because when you're dealing with a budget, you can only have a couple of priorities, and all of them are important. And mind you, listen, this is not to bash downtown development. I think that any 21st century city that does not have a viable residential downtown ultimately fails, so that's a great thing for us, but we got to take a look at that. You know, with the mayor, I've been pushing on a couple of things that are very important to me. One of them them is certainly the USF area. I think it's a very important thing because that's an area that is so underutilized in terms of its potential. I know that it recently got designated as an opportunity zone through the county. A lot of controversy there, obviously, through opportunity zones. I think if used right in this area, it can be something where we can use the benefits of the free market to enhance an area that's really been underdeveloped. We've also talked about having some sort of a special taxing district for the USF area. So far, the mayor's been very receptive to that, which I've been very appreciative of. That's a part of my district that really, really needs a lot of help. It goes without saying. Different issues I've been trying to push on. Obviously, my oldest brother's developmentally disabled, trying to make sure that all of our city parks have, accommodations for kids with disabilities. That's something that's very, very important to me. Trying to get a so-called autism sensory-friendly park built in my district. Just a lot of different issues that we're dealing with.
So real quick, because I want to touch on a couple of the things that you mentioned there. The USF Medical School, because this is something that former Commissioner Mark Sharp has been working on. In terms of technology, innovation, expanding the medical system or the whole environmental ecosystem. In that university area. Do you see this really? Do you see the medical school moving downtown as like a really big hit to that USF area? To me, it seems like it would be.
Upon first glance, yes. But what this served to do was to make the case for having a transit connector between the USF area and downtown, and then ultimately connecting that over to West Shore. And why is that? Because you've got USF Medical School downtown. So you can take something that could be apparently a hit at first glance and then try to use it either for CSX rail or BRT, bus rapid transit, to make that connector. You do that, that's going to create transit-related economic development for the North Tampa area that badly needs to put everything together.
We did a lot of conversations about transportation last week, and the one thing we all agreed upon was that if the goal is to remove congestion and remove cars off the roads, then adding buses is not going to happen. It's not going to work on that, especially if you have buses that are not even moving into the lane for the bus lane to pick up, and it's still causing the delay in traffic. And just adding more buses into that is going to cause more of a problem. I would love something elevated. I would love something that is more... I don't think we should be looking back into 15th and 16th century technology when it comes to train, when it comes to the choo-choo train, instead of us focusing on something that's more futuristic and having that kind of percolate into something that goes forward. So that's a minor detail that we talked about. But I also think moving that into downtown, we already have a huge development happening in the Water Street district. That is, we're literally creating a new neighborhood all onto its own. I love the idea of downtown developing the way it is, but I also fear that more money will go into downtown and not go into the neighborhoods that are surrounding Tampa and the county as a whole.
Well, look, I actually just spent both last weekend and this weekend, spent some time at Disney, and they actually have what is essentially a BRT lane running through their Disney Springs area. So, I think it serves a function. It's just in the way that FDOT wants to implement it, which is a tri-county BRT that would run all the way from Pasco, Wesley Chapel, all the way through downtown St. Pete. To me, I think that's a huge waste of money given the amount of land that would have to cover, and then again, you're either going to have to expand the lanes that you already have, or you're going to have to take away from the lanes you already have to make room for these dedicated bus lanes.
We do have potentially on the interstate one lane that or strike that room for one lane within 275 that could potentially be used for bus rapid transit. Bus rapid transit at least gets us a step forward. Is it perfect? No, but it's a more affordable, so long as it's real BRT. I don't want just a beautiful bus on the interstate that comes in and out. That's really lame. You need something that a good number of people in our area are going to be using. And I think BRT, if done correctly, right, if done with its own dedicated lane, with the right kind of investments, it will not only be used by people, but it can also support transit-related economic development in underserved communities, which is a good thing, I think, obviously.
But my other question, it was, given Mayor Castor's background in law enforcement, are you seeing that perspective kind of play out in any of her priorities?
It's funny that you say that. I've always admired Mayor Castor's over 30 years of service in uniform for Tampa Police Department. She is in many ways in that regard a trailblazer. and she doesn't get enough credit for that, in my opinion, from a lot of folks. I think she's been a real trailblazer. I think that when you look at her and then Chief John Bennett, he used to be the head of SWAT here for the City of Tampa Police Department, and he's just a tremendous guy. The police influence that you see, there's a lot of different faces to being a police officer, just from my interaction with cops. There's the tough situations that you see in John Wayne movies, and then there's the community stuff that you don't always see in movies.
I was going to ask about that, actually, when you were going on earlier, do you think some of her return to neighborhoods, as you put it, comes from the fact that she's been a beat cop?
Oh, yeah.
That
Sure.
she knows the neighborhoods, and she knows, like, man, if they would have only put a park here, we wouldn't have this issue.
And that is correct, which is that the influence, I think, of law enforcement with her has been the idea that she is a neighborhood advocate, because community engagement has been a big thing for her, exceptionally so. Again, not that it wasn't an issue for Mayor Buckhorn, but it is acutely so, especially so for her, given her background as a police officer. Mm-hmm. Police officers wear many hats. One of them is being a social worker. Yep. You know what I mean? And that's the soft hat. And you see that with Chief John Bennett. I joke with John Bennett. He's so nice to city council, and I go, dude, you're the kind of guy that you wake up every single morning, you pour a bowl of milk, and then you put like bullets in it, and then that's your breakfast. This guy's a real tough guy, but he's always community minded, and he deals with us with a lot of diplomacy, and I appreciate that.
I'll give you a little insight, as knowing a lot of fellow veterans and stuff like that. The toughest guys I always knew. Yeah. The guys who they're hard as nails. You get to know them; they're freaking teddy bears.
Yeah,
they're teddy
I
bears.
agree.
So I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah, and that's Chief Bennett. He's a heck of a nice guy and very community oriented. I mean, I remember the Memorial Cemetery over in East Tampa in College Hill. I'd read about it, and it was just a moral disaster. You had about 15 or 20 graves of who were there of African Americans who not only served in World War I, but died in combat, and the area was just not kept. So we got together, thanks to Marvin Knight, a work crew, and we went out there and we worked for 3 or 4 hours to kind of clean it up, and then we did a little ceremony with a couple of women there who were in the military to honor those veterans, and Chief Bennett was there the entire time, and I could tell, just being an attorney, you can kind of smell, pardon it, the BS stuff or whatever, and he did it really sincerely. It's not because he wanted, because he had to be there. He was because of his heart. Mm-hmm.
So, so let's go ahead and address the big topic, one that we've been wanting to bring you in for. And again, certainly not enough time to truly dig into the severity of this topic. But one of the things where, again, this is kind of where things have gotten pretty partisan, because at the city level, there's a lot of gray area, right? It's not as starkly red and blue as it is at most other levels of government. And so we're talking about the ban on assault rifles that I believe you're wanting to propose or have proposed. Can you give us some background on that before we kind of dive into the issue?
I did a resolution in Tampa City Council supporting a reinstatement of the 1994 ban on so-called assault weapons that had been in place from 1994. I believe it wasn't until 2004 or 2005. I did it for a number of reasons. Now, mind you, this is something that's very important. It's a resolution to support federal legislation. We are not having a ban on any kind of gun issues here in the city of Tampa. That's illegal. And if I even propose that, I could be removed from office. I don't want to do that. But the kind of legislation that I support is essentially mirroring what we had in the 1994 legislation. And it's not a retroactive ban, by the way. You're just asking for trouble, in my opinion. I know that, what was his name, man? I'm tired and sick. The Texas congressman who ran against Ted Cruz. Beto O'Rourke talked about that. I just don't think that's...
Roberto
Francis.
Yeah,
Francis.
Not something that is feasible, in my opinion. So, we do resolutions to deal with different issues, like I did a resolution, for example, supporting Amendment 4, etc. The reason I did that is because I think that the gun issue has become victim to the stratified politics that we have today, where, for example, according to the National Review, up to 60% of Republicans support the reinstating the assault weapons ban when he ran for president in 2000, and then for re-election in 2004. Then governor and then later President George W. Bush supported it, and yet today that's about as beloved as in the Republican Party is raising the top tax rate to 90%. And for the life of me, I don't get it. I believe that you can support sensible gun restrictions while still supporting the Second Amendment.
So just to make sure we're framing the argument correctly. You're talking about a resolution for the city of Tampa to essentially be an amicus to federal legislation, to move the needle at the federal level, not to actually pass any laws here at the city level or at the state level.
No. There's different ordinances that I'm looking at with different things, but nothing on guns. Yeah, because we're legally prohibited from doing so.
Preemption is at the state level here.
We're preempted from everything. When I coughed 2 minutes ago, I was preempted from doing that. We're pretty much always preempted, so,
But again, given that it's a resolution, okay, now we get that, all right? And then that's why I wanted to kind of lay the groundwork. So now it gets into why.
Yep.
We understand the school shootings. We understand some of the other tragedies that have taken place. But again, you're someone who grew up in a very moderate household, Republican parents, I believe.
Conservative, man.
Cuban exiles. Exactly. And so, looking at it from that standpoint, do you truly believe that there would be a significant impact on those types of incidents from happening if this ban were to somehow come back?
I think when taken as a whole, when you take a look at things like universal background checks, waiting periods, ban on so-called, they call them cop killer bullets, armor-piercing bullets, et cetera, things like that. Will that be a step in the right direction towards preventing crime? Absolutely. Is that a panacea? Is that something you go, okay, we've implemented these gun restrictions that, mind you, we had 25 years ago. Crime's going to be done? Absolutely not. Crime is, for me, there's many tools in the toolbox to fighting crime, from being tough on crime, from being tough on the causes of crime, from taking a look at guns, talking about mentoring. And for me, that's a tool in the toolbox. And our stratified, divided political system has taken out this tool in the toolbox that 60% of Republicans support. George Bush used to support.
Why is this the first one? Why couldn't we why can't you propose for mental health? Or for mentoring, or other things that weren't as divisive as this one is. Again, I think the reason why Republicans and many Democrats also that are NRA supporters and gun supporters feel is that this is not aiming the arrow in the right direction, whereas you should be focusing on something that is more substantial. Because again, the shooting in California was 16 seconds long. Is any of the laws that we have in place, or a law that you would propose on the federal level, do anything to deter that situation? And that's why a lot of us feel that you could aim at something else and be able to be much more effective and not be as divisive.
I'm a strong supporter of mental health awareness. I mean, I've been very involved with organizations in my district. I've actually done, I think it is 2 resolutions dealing with mental health issues, including, I know it was a couple days ago, Suicide Survivors Awareness Day. It was Mental Health Awareness Month. I recently went with the mayor to the it's National Association for Mental. What the I stands for, NAMI, I forgot. But I went to their event. Mental health is a huge issue. I still remember years ago when Republican Senator Pete Domenici united with Democratic Senator, the late Paul Wellstone, to talk about mental health parity being mandated in all healthcare plans. Things like that I'm a strong supporter of, and I have a record in that. But again, that's a tool in the toolbox. And in our stratified divisive politics where people go, okay, take a look at this that y'all loved 15 years ago. Now it's bad. And people attack.
Okay, so then... We want you on the show. We invited you here. I want to hear the details of this, because you're essentially asking, it's the city passing a resolution asking the federal government to have an assault weapons ban. Well, what's an assault weapon?
Right, yeah. To me, an assault weapon...
And not retroactive, right? So anything that anyone currently owns, they can keep.
I would want it to essentially mirror what the 1994 legislation was, which did certain things, such as, for example, take magazines that had... Gosh, I don't remember what the number was. I think it was over 20, 25 rounds, and get rid of those. Take a look at certain weapons to have detachable magazines, high-capacity semi-automatic weapons with high-capacity magazines. That is essentially what the definition of an assault weapon is. There's certain weapons like an AR-15 that don't necessarily qualify as being what an assault weapon is, but we're talking about mirroring the 1994 law. That, to me, is essentially what we were looking at.
And not having that be retroactive. So anything that's currently out there. If I have an AR with a 40-round mag, I can keep it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, from a practical standpoint, the government coming into homes and taking away people's
So then the question becomes, how do you know when I bought it?
Well, you mean you'd have to say after this date you may no longer do so. I remember reading about the 1994 law in a Bob Woodward book some years ago, and there was a period after it was passed by the Congress, and the Democrats paid dearly, by the way, for that in the '94 elections. Remember Jack Brooks from Texas and Tom Foley
Newt became speaker.
Exactly, they paid dearly. But yes, I'm sorry, but there was a period before which it was implemented where you could buy them. Whether that happens here or not, I don't know. I'm not going to, vouch for the very minutia of the legislation in terms of how.
Well, obviously, because
there's an honor system in the law.
Well, and the federal government will be at the end of the day writing the details of the law,
Sure.
which scares me. But
Correct.
Yeah, that scares me.
I think
Well,
I think the reason why people are so
you sound like you're arguing in good faith.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then
but you're not the
very
one
bad,
the law.
and then a
Exactly.
very bad law comes down the pipe. And it's funny. A quick side story is like it's interesting to me that Democrats tend to, in the House of Representatives, get voted out of office every time they pass controversial laws.
Yes.
Oh, I know.
And Republicans happen to just fall out of office not when they pass controversial, when they stop doing things.
You know what I say, and I'm proud of this. I mean, I remember Harry Truman, probably my third favorite president, said I'd rather be right than be president. And I always tell people, listen, I get booted out of office, I go back to being a lawyer making probably 50% more than I do now. You know what I mean? So I like to think I'm in office to do the right thing. And for me, that is something that I, in my conscience felt was the right thing. But again, it's symbolic of the lack of common sense on so many of our political issues right now, where there's demonization on issues because the right and the left are taught that, you may not do that. For example, I mean, you take a look at Vice President Joe Biden, who with a lot of the Democratic base 2 years ago, they love taking pictures with him. And now suddenly he's this terrible person. You know what I mean? You see the same thing, by the way, with Mitt Romney, with John McCain, with so many different people.
The political winds blow. I mean,
yeah, but
politics
people should
exist on a sphere.
But
and
people should be. People should be smarter.
To get rid of Obamacare, and that's what pissed off a lot of other people. One of his final acts was basically screwing over the Republican Party. But I think the reason why, again, you are correct that a lot of gun-abiding Republicans would be perfectly fine with a lot of measures in regards to background checks and everything else. But I do not.
I for one would not.
And that's it. But the problem is, I do not see that deterring what you want to accomplish.
If the end goal is to deter crime, I mean, I don't know if. Let's say we were all on board, we passed the legislation, we do a gun buyback, we follow all the details. I don't know if that really moves the needle.
And it's interesting, the NRA, the way they've changed in the last 30 years. 30 years ago, they were always conservative, but slightly right of center. Today, I mean, you've got people like Ted Nugent on the board of the NRA. That just speaks.
Well, okay. Let's put that aside, because I as a lifetime NRA member, I've been very, very vocal on the fact that NRA doesn't get any more my money because their board and their current direction is unacceptable.
Sure,
but
a lot of
and I've been very public about that.
In the left and right, that happens in any organization.
So the NRA is going through. It's having its little moment.
Yeah,
and we'll leave it alone. All right, but nonetheless, there's still millions. There's 3 million concealed carriers in the state of Florida alone. When they come to Tampa, are they welcome?
Oh yeah, of course. Listen,
are they welcome to carry?
I am not anti-gun in any way, in the sense that somebody who owns a gun, whether it's for hunting or whether it's for protection, I am not anti-gun. In that regard, whenever you have people who have guns, we often talk about respecting people's culture. For a lot of Americans, guns are part of their culture, and we have to respect that, just like we would respect anybody else's culture.
And it's the right of every American.
Yeah, it is. But again, there are certain extremes, such as so-called assault weapons, weapons that can, shoot 60, 70, 80 rounds in 1 minute. To me, that does not fall into the Second Amendment.
Is it the goal for you to reduce gun crime or to reduce access to certain guns?
I think that when you reduce access to guns that are solely meant for mass taking of life, then that is a tool in the toolbox that's arbitrarily been taken away.
Why mass though? Why mass? To argue the morality thing. I mean, I've gotten to know you over the last hour, and to argue that morality point, right,
sure.
is why? I mean, if that's how you feel, like, well, then why don't just get rid of them completely? Because
No.
handguns do more damage than any form of assault rifle.
Well, especially if it's not retroactive, then again, these weapons are going to continue to exist out in the marketplace in perpetuity, regardless if someone's not able to buy the latest model.
It's principle. It's principle that guns like that should not be legally and actively and continued available in a country that values public safety.
But those are not the guns that are causing the mass amount of deaths.
And you've got to go after gun crimes, by the way. You've got to go after gun crimes. You've got to go after people who commit violent crimes with guns. Again, there's so many different tools in the toolbox. I just go, why are we arbitrarily taking this tool out of the toolbox?
But to me, I feel like you're arbitrarily...
the first one, exactly.
I feel like you're arbitrarily drawing the line at, let's go for the guns that kill lots of people instead of the gun. Just, I mean, is one life?
Yeah.
I mean, really, is 10 lives worse than one?
You're going against every gun that shoots more
terrible.
bullets instead of the gun that is caused more death. And even then, gun crime deaths outside, if you retract suicide, it's getting lower and lower.
I think that would be an infringement upon people's civil liberties. And while there may be an argument to be made that it will maybe reduce crime, I think if you do a mass prohibition on guns, that would be a violation of people's civil liberties. I do not believe that reasonable restrictions that I am unaware. I know I believe it is the Heller decision. I'm unaware of any court decision that says that things like background checks, so-called cop killer bullets bans, things like assault weapon bans, etc., violate the Second Amendment. I'm unaware of any. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm unaware of any as I sit here today.
Certainly not yet in this in this federal circuit. Not yet.
Yeah,
I think there might be in one of the federal circuits though.
Okay. I think 4 or 11.
But I understand that all politics. I love this quote recently: "Is all politics is on a sphere. Everything is a slippery slope."
Sure.
So you can't argue. Well, that's a slippery slope. Everything's a slippery slope. But where it sounds to me that it's just okay. Well, by the city passing this and asking the federal government to enact legislation to bring back the 1994 ban. Okay, well then how does that end up getting interpreted? Because if you have a semi-automatic handgun, is that can carry 12, 13 rounds, is that high capacity now? Is that is that a federal crime? And should it be?
And you don't allow yourself to be the one that interprets and makes those decisions. And that's why a lot of us are a little upset about the fact that this is what you're pushing. We could have pushed for background checks. We could have pushed for something else. Again, you yourself said there's so many other tools in the toolbox. We wish you would have used another tool or another topic.
And one of the reasons I did it,
get more Republicans and independents to support this.
I don't think I'd get a lot of Republicans. I'll be honest, because again, it's kind of like you take a look at charter schools, for example. I talk to a lot of my fellow Democrats on that. They go, "We got to get rid of all charter school funding," and I go, "Well, Pepin Academy is a charter school." For example, it's kind of an extreme, which in my opinion, the Florida legislature has, liberally infiltrated our public school funding with a lot of unaccountable charter schools. But not everything is wrong. We've kind of gone to an extreme in that regard with our rhetoric. Take a look at the Republicans with guns. Not to say that one is the same to the other, obviously, but that a lot of Republicans don't support universal background checks. A lot of Republicans don't support waiting periods that we used to have universally. A lot of Republicans, obviously, with assault weapons. A lot of activist Republicans, because again, according to National Review, 60% of Republicans support that. 60%, Democrats and independents, I'm sure it's 80, 90%.
But you're not taking the next question that's asked in regards to who would you feel more comfortable in regards to giving them the power to be able to write that legislation. And it drops significantly. And so that's why it's a huge issue on the Republican side that if, again, we see Democrat nominees running for presidency saying that they want to confiscate all guns. And again, that one comment from Beto destroyed his presidency bid to the point that he couldn't even raise enough money.
I don't think I've seen a Democratic nominee, and correct me if I'm wrong, talk about a confiscation of anything excluding AR-15s and assault weapons.
No,
he said all guns.
Beto did.
Beto said all guns.
I would be surprised if that's what he said. Being
I'm
from
almost
Texas.
positive people.
I'd be very surprised.
That's why he was from Texas.
Sure, I'm pretty sure that is what he said. Yeah. However, I will say in the clip that I saw he was pretty heated. So Freudian slip, maybe. But
so here, because again, we're at almost about 90 minutes. So
what's wrong with
that?
Let's go for 3 hours.
No.
So I want to go ahead and kind of wrap up the topic with this question. Given the political climate in D.C., right? Given that is a Senate-controlled majority by the Republicans, and given that we have a Republican president, why this? Why now? Again, looking at what it might seem like a pretty stark odds of something like this even being effective at all, or actually, coming to fruition in any way in Congress.
A couple of things with that. Number one, we had our Republican mayor in Clearwater who took a chance in trying to pass a resolution with his city council, which ultimately failed. I thought it was good to have his back, and that was actually the genesis of it. The other issue is, again, bringing back the center on this issue within the Republican Party and the mainstream of conservatism, which is that things like this are not, in my opinion, extreme. I think it also comes down to an issue of respect that I think a lot of gun-owning conservatives have been led to believe, whether correctly or incorrectly, that people who support gun control disrespect them and stereotype them and belittle them, the clingers. And I think that when you establish that respect...
I would agree. I would agree that this is a very polarizing issue, which is why I'm trying to dig a little deeper here and see, like, okay, what exactly? And to his point is, like, this is not something that's necessarily going to get passed right now, and with this Congress, certainly not. Maybe.
No.
It'll be a while.
But and
that's why we wish you picked something else.
Right. And if it's not something that is necessarily achievable at the federal level within the next 5-6 years, because I don't think politically this will get any motion at the federal level in the next 5-6 years, and it's not something that's politically available at the state level. I mean, it's the only reason you're appealing to the federal level is because the state odds look worse. I mean, are you playing numbers here?
I believe one of the reasons we looked at the federal government was also just to be an abundance of caution, careful with the state preemption law, because we don't want to even touch that.
Okay, so Carlos Smith, state representative from the Orlando area, is also pushing for something similar, right? Because in his district is where the Pulse shooting took place.
Yeah.
And again, is this something that, I mean, certainly not in your case. I don't think you're up for re-election right now, are you?
23.
Okay, yeah. So for you, it's not necessarily something that you're using to drive support.
No,
but for him, who he is under re-election, it seems to me like this is kind of a call to action, for a lot of the base in Orlando.
Yeah.
Do you think that helps or hurts, these kind of efforts?
Like my thing, I don't think it. I certainly don't think it hurts it. I think if you look at, like, you talk about re-election. My district includes New Tampa, USF, North Tampa area. There's a lot of Republicans in my district. There's a lot. I had a community meeting in New Tampa. There were about 15, 20 people, and I know them all well. They're probably 60% were Republicans, and a lot of them have worked with me over the time, et cetera, et cetera. I find, and this is something that I find encouraging about my time in public office, is that a lot of people believe in common ground. Which I do, and I legit, which is why, not to get back to my Trump bashing, but that's why Trump bothers me so much, because I aspire for common ground. But
to that point, and to the referendum or the motion that you're pushing here, is this really a common ground proposal?
I don't.
Is this, or now that you're not up till 23, is this okay? This is a nice symbolic gesture.
Sure.
That I'm politically isolated from.
No, I wouldn't say that, because, for example, when I got elected in 2016, I got elected by 65 votes in a fairly conservative district, and then I had another election in 2 years because it was a special election. One of the first things I did was go to a rally for Syrian refugees. After that, I took a stand on the Confederate Memorial. Then I took an MPO vote that a lot of people on the left didn't like, et cetera. What I like to do is to do things where I follow my heart. And I think a lot of people that could say, hey, we may agree or disagree with you, but at least we appreciate that you're following your heart and trying to be real about things. Because that's one of the things that ticks me off about politics. Just take a look at Lindsey Graham.
Well, so Johnny, let me ask this. All
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Go.
How do you view your job then as a public servant? Are you there to do the people's will, or did the people elect you to do your will?
That's a good question. We live in a republic. People elect us to do what we think is right in consultation with the people. We represent our districts. We have to vote our conscience ultimately. If my district says, do X, Y, and Z, and then it violates my conscience, for example, that inherently sets up a conflict. I think my role as a city council member is to fight zealously for my district. I represent an area that has been ignored for far too long here in the city of Tampa. Within our first few years, we got money for design for an autism park, $3 million for a rec center expansion. We're now talking about a wholesale, what I call a Marshall Plan for the USF area. I actually look at it like being an attorney, which is that, you zealously represent your client. And mind you, what I love about the city is most of the issues we deal with, excluding assault weapons, right? Non-resolution issues, they're not left or right. It's just common sense.
Right. So then, and again, this is the question we still don't feel like we have an answer for is why this issue? Why now? Is it purely symbolic and your conscience?
Again, a lot of us would support if it was something else that you had focused on, and that's where a lot of the Republicans are really at a gun hole. Not to use the term, but really agitated about this situation to the point to where we are really thinking about running someone in that seat. And again, a lot of us know you, a lot of us like you, and this is literally become the one thing that is now the marching orders for a lot of Republicans in your district.
And as a Pinellas County Republican,
you got no dog in the fight.
Well, specifically, you brought up the Clearwater mayor, and he will not be mayor anymore. So, with that, I think, Johnny.
All right. Well, that was a good chat. And again, Louis, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you all for having me.
Yeah. So unless you want to stick around, which we're going to...
I would love to, but I got 12
out of
with me.
Yeah, I know.
So,
and out of personal enjoyment, we're going to talk a little bit of inside baseball here for our final topic of the day. So again, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And I'll go ahead and switch back to my own camera so that way it doesn't seem awkward that you're stepping away from the desk at this time.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Thank you so much.
Again, thank you to Councilman Viera for joining us. And, again, thank you to everybody for watching. If you're still watching, we're running like 90 minutes long here. But again, I told you we had a lot to talk about. Again, we got, I'm going to turn you down, guys, over there just for a minute.
Si se puede. Si se puede.
So, that's recorded. So now don't ever run for office because we're going to use that against you.
I don't know him.
I don't know. Awkwardness.
Switch
over, Johnny.
I know.
Switch over.
Forget it. It's too late.
I said hi in the camera.
Look at that. This is why we can't have nice things.
Little inside baseball. So there was a dinner apparently over this weekend, and while I think many of us expected for no one to notice, it actually got a lot of attention. Before we kind of start to dissect it here and bring the show to a close, I do want to, in all honesty and sincerity, I do want to thank Congressman Gates, Joe Gruters, Christian Ziegler, Congressman Spano. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some other names, for coming out to the dinner and really giving at least a little bit of a last breath here to this county Republican organization. No, because honestly, it's the right thing to do. And despite the fact that they again are being led poorly. And really are in no position to get anybody elected in this upcoming election. They came out and did their part, which was to represent the party, to try to help them raise money. But again, I think the write-ups that we saw post dinner, I think are an example of exactly what is wrong with this organization, which is that they cannot pull off anything right without everything going wrong. And so, all right, I'm going to switch over to Anibal here, but in a second. But their main speaker, I guess, went into labor.
Yes.
Okay. Which why, if you're pregnant, why do you accept a speaking engagement knowing the timing of your pregnancy? Because she's not local to Florida, I don't believe. Luckily, in my opinion, the bigger draw was Matt Gaetz anyways. So they got lucky there. But then, now you see the aftermath coming out in the media, and it seems like Rhonda Storm stole the show.
It's interesting to be delicate about this topic when you hear all the reports being flooded into what happened, who attended, who didn't attend. And this is in regards to the Lincoln Day dinner that the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee organized and then executed. I thought the main speaker not showing up was a hard blow.
Embarrassing.
I felt really bad for the HREC when that happened.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
But then I realized all the details of she was pregnant. I'm like, is she gonna travel on a plane to get here the last week of her pregnancy? And so all these questions are coming in. My wife isn't pregnant, so I don't know what goes on with women when they get pregnant. So evidently you can't fly. But that was a blow. The location was
terrible. No, look, from an organization
that location is rough.
No, from an organization that had their Lincoln Day dinner just like 3-4 years ago
at the
Grand Hyatt.
Yes,
even the Pepin is an amazing venue. All right, and the Pepins have been incredibly supportive for so many years of this organization, and for them even to. I don't know.
We have no details of what the Pepins have said.
I mean, look, it was absolute shade being thrown at by Bay News 9 and Mitch Perry's write-up about this event, but it was a venue in a strip mall. and I think that is the perfect representation of the state of this organization.
I've been to many quinceañeras there, and I think it's a perfect place for a quinceañera. And then when you hear that's for the Lincoln Day dinner, I just, in my mind, I'm like, ay, gloria a Dios. Bless their hearts.
Well,
in regards to the location.
I don't think it helped. The Pinellas County, I have to plug them. So Pinellas County had a fantastic Lincoln Day dinner. All right.
For the record, I tried to get Todd to come on to the show tonight. Todd Jennings being the chairman of the Pinellas GOP.
Todd's a very busy man. You get me instead. I'm a better salesman. Todd's watching. I'm gonna get something thrown at me. But no, it definitely highlight the difference between the two counties. I think it definitely highlights the status of Hillsborough County's Republican Party and the matter that it is defunct.
I would love to see the fundraising numbers, to see what the numbers are that they brought in. Again, because we've seen the numbers that they brought in the past in regards to the large numbers, and it comes to the main donors. I can think of 5 or 6 names that usually donate to the party in regards to what they want accomplished for the rest of the year and in the upcoming election cycle. So if it's not bursting at $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, then it's not a successful Lincoln Day dinner. I mean, Johnny, would you be correct in me saying that you expect $20,000, $40,000, $60,000
easily
when it comes to the Lincoln Day dinner?
Easily.
And the moment you hear that they're pushing people to buy tickets is the moment I realize that there might be a problem.
No, Pinellas
Lincoln Day dinner, you know this. Lincoln Day dinners do not.
I couldn't get tickets.
I
couldn't buy tickets to my own county's.
The goal is not
Lincoln
to buy individual tickets. The goal is to sell out big tables and then fight
which is what Todd did.
We used to have to
very,
do.
very successfully.
I remember when I started going to HRC meetings, and I was just a young kid with Johnny, and we were like fighting to get into these Lincoln Day dinners, and to the point to where you didn't know if you'd be able to get into the door or not without volunteering or like putting in some money or knowing someone. Now I think I could have just walked in and bought a ticket at the time.
Bought a ticket at the door.
And again,
that's bad.
And again, that's bad. And that's gonna. I want to see what their numbers were. I want to see everything. The photos and people that came out said that it was not well attended, and the pictures showed a little bit of a different when it comes to that story.
I do think, and there was talk about this 2 years ago. All right, I do think that I for one do not understand why the local parties, the executive committees, are done by county, especially when you look at a county like Hillsborough, where you got a lot of water dividing up a lot of things, and South Tampa.
Well, it's a huge county. It is. Yeah. It is the I believe the largest county in the state.
One of the largest counties. Yes.
Yeah.
And it begs the question: should this be, especially with its population, with its current size, should this be 2 executive committees? And that's a question for Joe Gruder. I don't mean to put him on the spot.
Look. So this is something that's been talked about for quite a while, right?
It's not my idea.
Because anyone who lives west of Ybor City and north of I-4 has made the case for this for a long time. And honestly, maybe more than ever, this needs to be the case. I used to think it was a ridiculous idea. But the truth of the matter is that those 2 sections of the county could not be more different. They in every way. And again, we talk about the fact that you have a group of people who have no political experience, came in and basically just took over an organization with no prior knowledge or relationships or connections. Okay, and everything that has led up to this has been a result of that, and they've pushed out the people who had been putting in the work for the Republican Party for decades. Because they felt that they knew better, or because they felt that those people were establishment, or because instead of saying, hey, we're all on the same team, no, they decided to push all these people out. And now you've got an incredibly weak organization in what is the most important corridor, certainly in Florida, maybe even in the country.
I would venture to say Pinellas and Pasco are more important.
No, but I mean,
that's not true at all.
No, but they're part of the corridor. But they're part of the corridor, though. That's right. Part of the I-4 corridor.
Yeah. Well, and then that goes to, well, why is Tampa, Tampa is by default all of Tampa Bay, and the other 2 counties kind of do feel
because we're good like that.
No, and you're not. Yeah, the other 2 counties get a little. Let's throw in some shade. The Economic Development Council over here that used to be the Tampa Economic Development Council is the Tampa Bay. It's like
because we're the largest economic force in the region. Chris.
Yeah, but you have to throw something across the bay.
So we'll throw a bone. Okay, it's fine. No, we're just waiting to annex Pinellas County anyways. In regards to that, I will say this. I think what's going to happen is I don't think, again, I don't know what's going on. I don't have any information in regards to leadership, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was something down the pike to figure out a way to turn the ship around. Again, let's see what the fundraiser numbers look like. If the fundraiser numbers are plus 30, plus 40, plus 50, then it's a whole nother conversation, because that means you have the funding to be able to do what you need to get done.
Again, 5 years ago, they were auctioning off lunches and dinners with congressmen for $10,000.
For $10,000,
and now I would venture to guess that they made probably less than $20,000. And much like they did 2 years ago, and certainly 4 years ago, they're going to mismanage these funds because, again, you had people sitting in a room with no marketing experience, no political experience, no communications experience, buying advertising on the radio, on newspapers, on bus stops, buying, when, again, you had local races that not only could have used the money, but they could have used the manpower. And so it's been mismanagement for a number of years now.
And again, the numbers will tell us what occurred and how much damage is being done. And at the end of the day, if Hillsborough County cannot get their ish together, then something is going to have to change in some manner like that.
RPOF is going to have to vote to have 2 executive committees in this county. I think the population also deems it. But the fact that
you even asked that question, that means you have no confidence in the current RPOF.
Well, I don't. But what do you want me to say? But the other thing is that, okay, well, who do you have who's a local success story that has won an election?
Inside the city of Tampa?
Inside Hillsborough County. You have Ross Spano.
Well, you have Ross Spano. You have some...
And Ross Spano
Toledo.
is a junior.
Toledo is
Toledo's
South
well
Tampa.
liked. Toledo is very,
we have
very
Republicans
well
on the school board.
All right. Well... do they want people to know that publicly?
Yes, it is public knowledge that they are Republicans on the school board. Again, we have an underground teacher coalition.
The fact that you have to put the word underground there states the whole problem, right? So you have Toledo, who is very, very well liked, and you have Spano, who is a freshman congressman, right? And what else do you have? I mean, the fact
we lost control of the county commission.
We
tried very little.
The
for
biggest
the city.
name you guys have and what they should have been pushing, but no, you know where she went for their Lincoln Day? Yeah, I'm talking about Ashley Moody. Mm-hmm. She's born and raised right here. All right. And where was she for Lincoln Day? Oh, yeah, that's right. Hernando County.
Yeah. No, but that is a perfect example of how disconnected. Look, let me tell you that they will never do so publicly, but the Republicans who are in elected office will not come anywhere near a county Republican meeting, okay?
And
for the very reason that this thing blew up in their face in the first place. You had Rhonda Storms, who I think, again, beautifully exemplified why this party is in such chaos. She went up there and, without asking permission, without having been asked to speak to this group, began to rail into the elected officials that were in office for not being conservative enough, questioning a lot of the policies that are being put forward. That is not the time or the place to get on your soapbox and chastise the elected officials of this party in a county that is already weak to begin with.
And that means two things. One, that the leadership does not have her respect, and two, does not have control. And those two things...
they have no control
And
over
those
anything.
are the two things that I really... Again, I like a lot of them. I know a lot of them. But this hurts me, the fact that this is happening. And again, I want to see the budget. I want to see how much was raised. I'll take all these words back if they were able to raise...
But look,
50,
the truth of the matter is that none of that
$30,000.
matters, Anibal. None of that matters. It doesn't matter what the dollar figure is, because
No,
they're going to
people-
mismanage those
people
funds
will
and they're going to flush it down the toilet.
But that's my point. People will give you the money if they trust you and they support you and they know that you're going to be doing that money according where that money is going to go. If you cannot raise that kind of money, no matter what you tell me, it means that people don't have trust in you. People don't have faith in you, and that's what the problem is when it comes to the county board.
And it is. I'm probably going to get in trouble now. It is.
You're not already in trouble.
I speak my mind. What
We
do you
get
want
put
from
on
me?
lists all the time in the place.
But it says something when I can overhear Joe Gruder saying to wealthy donors, that they should put their money in their local, that they should put their money in their local races or their local REC, and then you wonder why you don't have victories here. Then you wonder because you don't have a party that can actually run somebody effectively. You don't have a party that's willing to fund a race effectively.
You don't have a party that can say no to someone that should not be running.
Correct.
Again, that's where they were the gatekeepers for the longest time. They would be able to vet a little bit and be able to push people that would and could never win. So then we didn't have the distraction from a sitting Republican.
Mm-hmm.
And because that sitting Republican wouldn't pass a litmus test that probably Reagan couldn't pass.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the idiocracy when it comes to these individuals.
No, and meanwhile, they want to hold some candidates to a standard that's not only unrealistic, but also unelectable.
Right.
And so there's a complete disconnect from how you actually win elections, because, again, these people don't know how. They don't know how to win an election.
It is really interesting to me that the problem you're having here with the Republican Party is kind of the problem the Democrats are having nationally.
Yes.
It's like, whoa, too much cowbell. Okay, too much cowbell. All right,
That's a
it's
great
like
analogy.
let's wind this back a little bit, and hey, we're losing. Let's broaden the tent a little bit. Let's do some outreach. Let's do some. As much of a mess as Congressional District 13 Republican primary is, hey, you have an African American female, you have a Latino female, you have an Iranian female. And then we got some white guys, but you have some diversity running. There is definitely outreach into these numbers about Trump.
Yes.
On, hey, 34% of the black vote is thinking about voting for Trump.
36% of Hispanic
60% of it. That is being capitalized on in a county like Pinellas.
Yes.
All right, which is making Charlie Crist sweat. All right, regardless of who ends up the nominee over there. But what are we doing over here? We're complaining about not being part of the Trump club.
Well, and they can't even develop candidates for even the most local of races. I mean, the county tax collector is going unopposed. I believe the supervisor of elections, right, is.
I would love to be able to have an answer every time Democrat asks me those questions, and I cannot give him or her an answer because I don't have faith in the people that will. Again, that's the point of that body, was to funnel people into those positions that you would think need that kind of support. Just, hey, you know what? You've been a lawyer for X amount of years.
They need the framework.
You've been in politics for X amount of years. This is something that you could run for, and we'll get behind
or
you.
even school board races. I mean, even a school board race is you have a teacher who is just really into her job and she wants to run for school board. Who does she go to find out how to do that?
And she's a part of the secret WhatsApp.
Right. And who does she go to? You know, in other counties, you go to the party and you say, hey, you think I'd be a good fit for this? You know, you think I mean...
Yeah.
I remember when I was running, the first meeting I had was with Nick DeSiglia. You know, it was like, it was the first meeting I had, and, you know, it went well as much as I ended up withdrawing. But he wished me the best of luck, and I didn't get help from the party because I shouldn't have gotten help from the party. There was other Republicans running.
Right.
And and again, they were the standard bearers. They were the front gate holders.
Right.
And we trusted them and their opinions and their positions. Did we like what they did? No. Johnny and I have bumped heads hundreds of times with leadership in the past, but they always respected the fact that we would show up. They always respected the fact that we had an opinion, and they would always and they would have dinner with us afterwards. And that was always a thing. And now it doesn't feel like that at all. And that's the problem we're having.
I do think part of the problem that's going on over here, and we've been rather resistant to this on the other side of the bay, is I think there is the problem of the Trump Club, you know, taking over the local party. You know, the Trump Club.
I wouldn't say the Trump Club necessarily. I would say the litmus test as a Republican, that they're creating this test.
You have to support everything Trump does, or you might as well be Elizabeth Warren.
Well, and that's the problem is that not only is that applying to the president, but they have also applied that to themselves. And so this county party has even instituted a rule where you're not allowed to speak up against anyone that's on the board, or you get kicked out of the organization. I mean, this is supposed to be the party of the Constitution, and you don't even have freedom of speech within the four walls of your own meeting. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
I will say this again. I am saddened to see the numbers of members that attend these meetings dwindle to the point where when I first started attending, we were almost 300 plus in those meetings, and for a long time we were such a big organized force. And now I don't even know if they've made quorum the last few weeks or last few months that they've been meeting.
They're fixing the numbers anyways. And look, okay, so you know,
I did not say that.
I'll say it. I'm sure. No, look, I mean, because again, you've got well, he knows who he is. You know, you've got the guy over there fixing the numbers who wants to say that no, the party is just as strong as ever, and if you compare the number, he's doing some kind of crazy algebra math concoction over there, to try to. It's absolutely ridiculous.
AOC economics.
Again, the fact. Again, knowing that we all know that number that they raise is not going to hit nowhere near what we've raised in the past, shows that there is no confidence. And if
that number comes out negative, that they lost money.
Oh. How much does it cost to rent that place? It can't cost that much.
No, but given the firepower, and by that I mean the guests that were there, they should have come somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $75,000 easily.
Yes.
And sadly, I will guess, and Anibal, because I know you're going to look up the numbers, I will guess that they didn't cross 25. I will bet money that they didn't cross the $25,000 mark.
Is it true, Johnny, that Lincoln Day is not as big as Reagan Day? Normally, you raise a lot more for Reagan Day.
They don't do. At least in this county, they don't do a Reagan Day.
In this county,
and when they have, it's been a very casual
like a shootout
thing.
Or something, or a barbecue. It's a barbecue for Reagan Day. Now, but that's the thing.
We're the opposite over there.
Lincoln Day is our biggest fundraiser in the county. And again, if they don't raise plus 30. Then it was a complete failure, because this is what's supposed to fund the rest of the year. And again, if you're a member of the HREC and you're supposed to get a report next month of how much was raised, because it's not difficult to catch that money up quickly, they should be plus 30.
There's required to be an annual audit, right?
let's definitely not go there right now. I
All
do
right,
not
so-
have the time
well,
to
let's-
discuss
I've
what's
helped
happening
with
with
the
the
Pinellas audit, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like I looked through all the numbers.
Yeah,
Look, on that question,
No,
let's
no,
go ahead and wrap
no,
this up.
no,
So,
no.
again, thank you to everybody for watching. If you're still watching, I think there's a handful of people still watching. It's been an absolutely long show. Like I said, lots to talk about. I apologize.
Love it.
We will,
long show.
get it back under control next week. I hope. And
Ladies, we're so sorry.
3 hours
So
next
sorry.
time. Let's
No.
go.
a couple shout outs. Billy Mitchell, our buddy Billy, who was watching tonight, also active in the comment section. Hector Gonzalez, always active in the comment section. Also, congratulations to him on being the new chairman for the local chapter of the Republican Hispanic National Assembly.
That was not controversial at all.
Yeah, well, and
I love Hector to death.
on the
but
topic,
that was controversial.
I'm not surprised, and I'm not even going to go into why. But he mentioned Chad Chronister being a success story. But look, Chad is his own guy. He was appointed, anointed. I mean, you blessed.
Literally.
Crafted
there
out
was
of clay.
He was gonna. There was no
That jawline? Oh my gosh. That jawline is
Johnny doesn't like where the show is going.
beautiful. And those t-shirts that are one size too small, the women swoon. Oh my God. Leona, I know you're watching. I've never seen so many old ladies give hugs in my life. And you know what? He's doing what he gotta do to become elected. I don't have a problem with that at all. No issues.
And he actually proposes a really interesting idea, which I'm sure will likely come to fruition, that Rhonda Storms used this opportunity to launch herself back into that race, which she lost last year in the primary against Joe Wicker, and I wouldn't be surprised. She has great name ID in the district. I think plus 30, maybe even close to 40% name ID in that district.
But if she's going after that same population, she's going to lose the same way that she lost again.
I know.
Compared to when Joe Wicker and her ran.
Well, that depends if Wicker's
Joe
running.
Wicker, no, Joe Wicker's not
But
running.
she's always
Joe
been known
Wicker
as a
was
firebrand.
But Joe Wicker was the better candidate. I love you, Rhonda,
Right.
but Joe Wicker was the better candidate. This time around, Michael Owen is the better candidate when it comes to her if she runs into this race. And I think, again, it might have been just to test the win.
I think it
and
was
see
a
what she
stunt.
do.
No, I absolutely
I
think
completely
it
think it
was
was
a
a
stunt.
stunt. But I think that's the test. And if she does the same thing she did again, Michael Owen is going to win that race.
All I know, and I really hope he's watching because I served with him, but Andrew Learned cannot win that seat. He cannot win that seat. I've deployed with that guy, and it is not okay. Okay?
This got local and personal fast.
I know.
That escalated quickly.
He's probably seen things and heard things that we don't want to know about.
Carlton, what's up?
All right. We're going to start wrapping this thing up, which means that I need to get rid of that little graphic right there. And again, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Johnny Torres. Follow the yard sign at the yard sign. Thanks you again to Chris Licata for coming on to the show. We'll let you guys make a couple closing comments here. Anything going on with TBYR, Anibal?
I don't honestly do not know what's going on when it comes to dates.
You're just a treasurer. I know. Who's paying attention?
I know that the Christmas party is coming up. Look, go to the Facebook or the website.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay Young Republicans. It's coming up soon. We are doing voter interactions. There's groups of young Republicans that we just had a few last week where we all took a list of 100 young Republican registered and just texted them, hey, we're young Republicans. We're here. We want to be able to support the president. We have an event coming up and we would love for you to attend. And we had a lot of good reception out of that. I mean, some people, they're like, oh, I haven't never been a Republican. But we had a lot of good positive feedback from those lists. And I think we were able to touch almost 1,000 people that one night. So we're trying to do our best to outreach to young Republicans under 40 in Hillsborough County. And even if you are over 40, who cares? Come to drink with the rest of us.
We're a lot more fun anyway.
We are so much more fun. We're at the Barrymore. I think the last Monday of every month. Check the Facebook, check the website, and you'll be able to figure out. I cannot think of any. of these
Jake is going to give you such a hard time.
Such a big problem. Because you're going to remember those dates also, Johnny. When's the Christmas party, Johnny?
If I was still running the show, I'd know those dates.
This escalated quickly.
It's emails will be flowing after this. But last thing I would love to say is Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. I hope that everyone has a great time. And please remember the purpose of the holiday is the eradication of the indigenous people of America. Back to you, Chris.
On that note, how do you follow that
Yeah,
up?
how do I follow? Well, I'll follow that up with my ending statement of, Pinellas County and Pasco County are also Tampa. So Tampa Bay Young Republicans should really just be called Tampa Young
Again,
Republicans.
we're all waiting
And-
to annex your counties. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's we'll fight you. And with that,
With old
seriously,
people, yes.
have a blessed and happy Thanksgiving, and turn the politics off for a day, and
Just one day.
and just be thankful to be an American.
And remember, you're going to get 4 more years of him, so it doesn't matter. Just remember that.
I disagree. Bring up politics at the Thanksgiving table. Sylvie, save some money on Christmas presents. And
15% in the black community. That was the threshold. We're at 38%. What? Flip a table.
Look, honestly, even if those numbers are off by 10,
Oh,
that's
it
still
doesn't
big news.
matter. You go plus 15 for black and Hispanic communities. You win every election going forward. I don't know what's going to happen. You can't. I don't know. That's been the litmus test every single time. If we are able to breach 15% come election day, we win the election.
Yeah, look, this administration. Go ahead, Chris.
Even if we can get a lot of that demographic to just not vote.
yeah.
Not that I'm promoting not voting, but
Oh, my
geez,
gosh.
I'm
This
wow.
is why.
This is
Go cross the bridge.
Yeah.
Just go back over the bridge.
Yeah,
This
apparently.
is why we don't cross the bridge.
Nothing good comes. Nothing
We
good
have
happens
bridges.
when you cross
We
the
have
bridge.
nice hotels. Okay.
Oh my goodness! All right,
No, I'm
so
saying, let me make the point.
no, I don't think you want to make any more points.
How many
I
more
want to
points
finish
do you-
digging this hole. Is that no? If there is a portion of that demographic that just says, look, I can't make up my
support
mind.
either. I
I
cannot
can't
support
support
either.
either. I'll go vote for my local races
Yes.
because obviously get out the vote. But I'll go vote for my local races. I'm not voting in that race. Then that even plays into the numbers because even if they say that, they're not voting for the Democratic nominee, in which case Trump wins.
Again, our Democrat friend said it enough. If they were to not run a crazy, then we probably would vote, that a lot of people would vote for the Democrat nominee. But they're going to run a crazy or someone that is so corrupt.
Tulsi Gabbard, please run as an independent.
She's not going to run.
All right, John, you're just gonna have
Yeah,
to
just take us out. Take us out.
at
It's
some
done.
point.
It's done. He needs to cross the bridge before someone takes him out on this side.
We'll be back next Monday again, 7 o'clock here on Facebook and YouTube. It's The Yard Sign. Again, follow us on Twitter at The Yard Sign. Look for us on Facebook at The Yard Sign. Of course, on YouTube as well. Our website will be coming along soon. I'm going to try to take advantage of this Thanksgiving break to finish that up. Hopefully some others of the regular cast will be back for the next
your
show.
job requires you not to do something during the week.
Yeah, well, all right. That's a whole nother issue. But, oh my God, now you threw me off. All right. A little teaser. We have a county commissioner who's going to be joining us in early next year on one of our shows. So be looking out for more details on that. Again, thank you so much for watching. Again, please send us comments, questions, ideas for the show. If you'd like to be on the show, hit us up. I'd consider it. Thank you, everybody, again, for watching. And y'all have a great Thanksgiving.
Chick-fil-A.
Save me some leftovers.